Hey team, sorry that this is coming in a bit late, but here are some slides and an informational video. To be honest, I really struggled trying a million different things, and I tried a couple of different activities to try to make this introduction to systems thinking as interactive as it would be in the physical classroom. But Julian, as you know, when we do this, there's so much interaction and like movement activity that it's just super hard to replicate. I did my best, but I don't feel super confident about these lesson plans, but hopefully things will get better once we go into Iceberg and other tools like that. But anyways, so this first session starts with this quick video clip, which is just sort of an activation of prior knowledge. They have just turned in their spectrum of social change, so you can play this clip and just ask them to share out, what do they see in this clip in relationship to the spectrum of social change. There's awareness, there's allyship, there's a couple of different things that they could definitely name through this video. So this is just an activation of prior knowledge. And then just kind of remind them, like, as we're going to start to learn new strategies and new tools to think about social change, the purpose of the spectrum was to really guide where we're going, and that the 3 A's of the spectrum are going to be your goal for your ISE. So we're going to start introducing new strategies and new tools, but we start with the spectrum of social change to really keep our eyes on the long-term goal, which is getting to the 3 A's in their ISE project. Okay. And then, so this is kind of like another warm-up, a soft intro into systems thinking. You kind of ask them, how would you translate these words in English? Estrenar, pena ajena, desvelado, tusa, entusada, friolento. And the point of it is that they're going to kind of struggle or come up with different ways to translate them. And that leads to the next slide, which is these words actually don't have perfect translations because it really depends on context and country. Like fresa in Colombia could mean the fruit versus fresa in Mexico could mean us making fun of someone who's snobby or rich. In the same way that friolenta doesn't have an English translation. You could say someone who gets cold easily, but there's not a word that you can use to translate it. Basically, this is an example of systems thinking because the systems that surround language matters. And so those things don't translate just part by part, but we have to think about all of the different connections and systems surrounding it. So then we're going to say, let's play a game. This could fail horrendously. I honestly have no idea. I think Camilo has the first class, so you can tell us how it goes. But you're going to give them editing access to the slideshow, and then you're going to have, tell them max of 12 people per slide, just write your name in a box. So they're going to have editing access into the slideshow, and they'll write their name in the box. So Camilo, Alisa, Suniga. And so you'll wait till people have their names. So notice I have 2 slides. So each of us needs to make a copy of our own of this slideshow because we're going to use them. So Camilo, you'll make 2 copies. I'll need 2 copies, one for my ISC 5, one for my ISC 2, or I can just have one slideshow with multiple copies of this slide 6 and 7. But you're going to have them write their names in a box, and then you're going to give them directions. Say, without naming who, you guys don't need to say it or write it in the chat. Just pick 2 other names on your slide. So pick 2 other names that you see on your slide. And then when I say go, try to move your box so you're in between the 2 names that you selected. So just try to make sure that your box goes in between the 2 names. This is my best attempt at making a virtual version of the triangle game. Obviously what we will know will happen is that, it won't work. Because as I move mine, other people are moving theirs, and so all the boxes are constantly being moved around. You can let them do that for 30 seconds and then just say what made that difficult and have them kind of debrief. Well, everyone else was moving, everything as I moved, other people moved. And it's this idea of everything being connected, which leads to this slide. That is actually a very silly, brief example of systems thinking. You can even take the time to explain the triangle game. Or actually what I might even do is put in a video of the triangle game and they can watch it instead of actually playing it, which is sad. So I might add a video here of triangle game. And you can tell them this is what we would have done if we weren't in distance learning, which I don't know if is depressing or not. But then saying basically this is our soft introduction to systems thinking, which is this idea that we see the connections and not just the parts. So here's another way of thinking about it. Nothing changes in this pile of things on the left when a part is taken away. It's just one less part. It's just pieces of things, versus the system is when everything is connected and looking at all the connections, and how change definitely happens if I add or take away a part of the system. If I take away this wire or I take away this battery, then the whole system doesn't work. here is a short video clip. It's set up to only play for the first 3 minutes. So when you actually, this TED Talk itself is like, I don't know, 10 minutes long or something. But I have this set up to stop at like the third, right around like 2 minutes and 42 seconds. But he gives another example of thinking about, I have it set up to end at 2:38. He gives another example about thinking about systems through how to make toast. And so you can watch the video and then basically like synthesize the video saying, okay, guys, so we're going to go into some breakout rooms just to close out class today. And you're going to use what we've talked about to kind of come up with your own example. What do I mean? Well, we've been talking about systems thinking being seeing the connections and not just the parts, or like in the video about making toast, he talked about there's nodes and links or parts and connections. In breakout rooms, try to discuss a relevant example you can use with the fourth grader to explain systems thinking. So like something like he did in that TED Talk on how to make toast, but think of another example that you could use to explain the relationship between, the aspects of system thinking, which is the parts and the connections. And that's the end of class 1. It's not ideal. It's not, I tried a couple of different things, but it's just super hard to replicate what we do in in-person learning virtually, but it's what I got. Okay, and so then session 2 is I can demonstrate understanding of systems thinking and apply to causal diagrams. This is, again, another activation of prior knowledge, like asking them, like, okay, so what did we learn about last class? Guys, like, what are the difference between these two things on the screen? And then you'll kind of lead them into what we see on the left is just a pile of things. It's just stuff. If I take one piece of that away, nothing changes, versus the right is a system, meaning everything is connected and works together. And so each aspect influences the other. This is, Julian, you'll be familiar with this video. This is why systems thinking is important. The kids really love this video, on the parachuting cats in Bosnia that shows all this thing about unintended consequences. So you'll play this video and then you can put them in breakout rooms to debrief it and ask them, using that same parachuting cats example, right? They tried to solve a problem, but didn't think about all the interconnections. And so they ended up having to parachute cats into Bosnia. Think about a time in your own life where an action you took had an unintended consequence because you didn't think of because of a connection you didn't see at first. So maybe like give them a moment to think about it and then send them into breakout rooms. All right. And then this is not ideal either. Honestly, these are like my 2 least favorite lesson plans so far in distance learning. These are not as interactive as I would have liked, but I made a video board to introduce the concept of causal diagrams. And I'll link it here, but it's this. You're going to give them about 15 minutes. So that includes time for a brain break to watch these 2 videos. But in the videos, you'll ask them before. So guys, we're going to watch some videos to learn about another aspect of systems thinking called causal diagrams or causal loops. Take these notes down. Go ahead and open up your notes document, write these down. These are kind of the questions that should be guiding your thinking as you watch the videos. Then you have them watch the videos. You bring them back and you synthesize, it's okay if some of that didn't make sense. Causal loops and causal diagrams can be kind of complex ideas, complex things to think about. But some of the big takeaways is they're helpful for us as systems thinkers because, and you're kind of going to go through these bullet points. These are all the things that they help us do. They help us understand big picture. They help us see patterns and trends. They help us recognize how a whole system structure actually influences the behavior. They help us see cause and effect. And so you kind of go through these points of like why we're learning about causal diagrams. I'm still trying to come up with I played around with trying to make like a causal map that they could interact with. You can see I tried that here. It didn't feel right yet, and it felt like it would be super confusing for the kids, so I'm going to keep playing for that with maybe a future lesson plan. But basically, they're just learning about the concept of it, and like, we did this last year, Julian. We called it systems mapping, but the actual technical term is causal diagrams, and so I'm just using the technical term now instead of systems mapping. And then the breakout room to close, guys. So, and I think here's a really good space to tell them, like, it's okay if this didn't all make sense. Like, causal diagrams are one tool of many, and we're going to provide you many tools around systems thinking, and we're going to keep learning about causal diagrams in our upcoming lessons. But before we go into breakout rooms and share one thing, I definitely understood this about causal diagrams, and then go ahead and feel free to share something that you didn't understand. Maybe another classmate felt the same way too, and that's going to be validating. Like, hey, I also didn't get that, and that's okay. Or maybe someone in your breakout room can help deepen your thinking about that issue, but kind of providing space for them to share what they got and they didn't get from causal diagrams. And that's the end of session 2. And then we'll meet again We have a meeting scheduled on the calendar for Monday, which will give us time to meet before session 3 and 4 and kind of debrief how these went and where we'll go from here. So again, like I spent a lot of time trying to figure out, and we talked about this in our last meeting, how to make this intro to systems as interactive as possible. Unfortunately, it's just tough with virtual learning to replicate some of those really interactive, like with causal maps, we had kids write a million things on Post-it notes and then group the Post-it notes all around the room and then draw connections on the Post-it notes. It was super interactive, and I don't, haven't quite figured out what that's going to look like virtually, but hopefully we'll, come up with something by the end of the next class. But in this session 2, they'll just learn the concept of causal maps through watching the videos that I'll link here. But as always, everything is in the folder. So this is all going to be in the rotation 3 folder.